Necesitamos músicas. It's a nice word though, necesitamos.
We need.
Yeah, necesitamos. Muy necesitamos músicas.
My name is Alfred Darlington, and I perform as Daedelus.
Absolutely. I think Europe is really, it doesn't have that much continuity between countries. People have so much character, and I have to admit that when I'm in Spain, I feel much more comfortable. It feels much more like the west coast of America, where I'm from, like Los Angeles. Something about the beach meeting a city and a certain amount of affluence, and people are relaxed here. It feels a little bit more like home, so I in turn feel relaxed. But that isn't to say that I know what's going to happen. I'm very curious to see how people might react to my music here. I don't know. When I can find a record store, that's wonderful. And when I can find local crafts, that's cool too. But my main passion when I'm traveling, I'm places very quickly. I'm only in a city maybe for one night or maybe a day and night, sometimes at most. So I really enjoy eating locally, finding the food that makes the character of the people, and also maybe sometimes a little drink, just a little drink too, that kind of spells out why these people are this way and the disposition. You know, it makes sense that people in Germany, for instance, they eat maybe very heavy early and then they have a lot of energy 4 hours later, so they go out very late. And same thing in Spain, people seem to enjoy themselves so much during a meal that it makes sense that they enjoy themselves so much at night. And so I try to borrow into that a little bit. And so far here in Palma, it's been very good. I've been very happy so far.
Do you like the meal?
The cuisine, yeah, very much. I mean, there's things that I've known, like sobraseta. I've had that in Spain many times. But of course here it's like a revelation. It's different. It has a whole bunch more character and depth than the sobraseta I've had. You know, I try to make every performance tailored to the audience. I try to look at the audience and try to read them, and usually the easiest way is through dancing. The audience dances a certain way and maybe I can react back, you know, as appropriately or inappropriately as possible as I'm capable. Tonight's a little different. Tonight the audience is seated. It's in a museum kind of setting, like a very beautiful space, but at the same time, I don't know how people are going to react, so it may be a little bit different than my average, but I really relish those kind of experiences. This being my first time to Mallorca, it's like I don't have many expectations anyways. So if we get anywhere, I'm going to be very happy. You know, the Monome is a little different than your average MIDI controller. It allows for so much possibility and so much playfulness. The average MIDI controller, I think, usually works like a piano. It's very linear. It's like you play the note, it plays the note, or you twist the knob and it twists the, you know, like it's very much along expectation. Versus the Monome, you can go a whole bunch of different directions at the turn of a hat. You know, just drop of a dime. It's very easy to kind of move your own direction, so it keeps me interested. I think if I had to play the same show again and again, I mean, I play maybe, you know, hundreds of 150 shows last year, 155, something like that. So if I had to play that many nights and play the same set, I would just die. It would be over. So the Monome keeps me interested. That's, I think, one of the reasons why I find it so strong. When I find myself in a performance situation that is new, it's really good to feel out the audience for what their appreciation might be. And I never take it for granted that maybe things like dubstep or even electro might not have an audience. Maybe people are keyed into songs from older eras, or maybe my music hasn't reached these ears. So I really do like to use other people's music to like kind of underline ideas. It's really, a performance isn't so much about me saying something the whole time, it's about a dialogue. And in that dialogue there's going to be some arguments and there's going to be some agreements. And so it's worth having a wide range of music to maybe try. And it's not only my music or other people's music, but just the mix of those two things that are underlying certain emotions. Sometimes the emotion is supposed to be one of dancing, and sometimes it's supposed to be more contemplative and listening and dreaming. And a perfect performance is you can go through everything. You can have people moving but thinking and feeling. If you can do everything together, then it's perfect in my mind. The things I find outside of music that I find influential, I find all art, dancing, especially like modern dance and blues dancing, to be very impactful to the way I look at the world. To see people moving in space is very compelling. And so in that same way, film is very compelling. There's been certain films that are visually so stunning that I can hear them. You see the image, but you hear the sound, and they're together. It's synesthesia, where you're blending the senses. Same thing with food. When I have a good cup of coffee, and as silly as that sounds, I'm very passionate about coffee. When you have a coffee cup that sings, it's like a ringing bell. It just becomes melodic, you know? So these things all kind of blend together to be influential in the way I see the world. But of course, more than anything else, other sounds, other musicians that I can regard as being, as moving my soul. People like Michel Legrand, John Barry, they're film composers, and they made experiences. They make the film have more depth. And I try for the same kind of ideas when I make music myself. I try to make the music feel that much more, make life feel that much more if possible. And this is just, this is something I reach for. I don't think I get it, but I reach for it all the time. So these are kind of the mix of things. I think it's wonderful that Los Angeles now has a little bit more of a scene that people can look towards. You know, of course, any scene is a lie. It's just an outside viewpoint, seeing a collection of musicians as a group. But in this case, we really are friends. A lot of the beat scene, people like Flying Lotus, Gaslam Killer, Teebs, David Wexler, Toki Monster. I could go on and on and on with so many wonderful names of people who are constituting a new revolution in Los Angeles, musically and also culturally. Now you can go out on a Wednesday night and see 500 kids dancing to the same rhythm. It's a revolution for Los Angeles. But it's still a loose collection, and it's cool because it's always evolving. The sound is always changing, and I feel very proud to be part of this movement, and yet I know it's going to change. I know at this moment we're all kind of together, and maybe 2 years from now we're all going to be on our separate paths, but still friends. So, at least hopefully still friends. But the most important thing is that as long as we all keep active and evolving, I think people will always find something new to listen to from Los Angeles, and I feel very proud of being part of that. Now, again, Brain Feeder is Flying Lotus's label, and it has a wonderful frame of consciousness. It has like a viewpoint. And if you don't have an opinion, if you don't have a viewpoint in music, then it's just noise. You need to have a reason to push it forward, and a label like Brain Feeder is a good example of that viewpoint working, you know? You can have people as different as Matthew David or as Thundercat, as Toki Monster, all under the same label, and it's really different music. But it all starts to make sense because it's from somebody's view. There's many reasons why the culture is kind of dying across the internet. And to my mind, one of the main reasons is there isn't a good viewpoint, there isn't a good DJ that kind of makes the internet sing, makes it work. If you have someone that has a passion, it's very infectious. You feel it and you also want to share that passion. And the internet doesn't have much of that. It has a lot of critique and a lot of words, but not much passion. So maybe if somebody could solve that, the music industry and the film industry would all be saved because of that passionate voice. My relationship is good. There's a lot of wonderful events that Flylo does and that Brain Feeder does, and I participate in some of those events and also participate in some of that worldview, you know. I like the fact that our music can be jazz, our music can be dubstep, our music can be electronic. It can be all these things at the same time. There's no reason to have so many genres because it's just ways that journalists have come up, no offense, to talk about these things. And it's important to speak on music, but it isn't the music itself. When you put words on it, it's just words that are separate from the sound. So it has its place, but the truth is the sound. And you can listen and you can hear and you can get it more quickly if you just listen. Well, I can speak on the other aspect of the internet, which is, so it lacks some passion, but it does amplify these tiny voices. I mean, I'm one person from a city of millions. There's 12 million people in Los Angeles, give or take a few million, you know? How is it that my voice how is it that I can be here, you know? It's because of the internet. The internet's given me amplification to my small, strange sound so that I can be talking to you. And I love it so much for that reason. I love it that I can talk directly to my fans and my friends over these great distances, and we can have a direct communication, just like in a perfect show where there's all this communication where the audience tells you which way to go and you tell the audience maybe another way. It's like leading and following in a dance. The internet's the same way with my fans. The fans might say, please come play this show, and I can respond by hopefully playing. It's a very, when it works so well. You know, there's a few aspects to the last record. My last record was called Bespoke. Bespoke being very literally being someone talking. To me, more so, is having to do with fashion. Something that's really made for the person. And I think there's something very powerful about actual fashion, the fashion that we wear, because it speaks to people very quickly, and yet it doesn't say anything. You know, to one person, Louis Vuitton means something really fancy. To another person, where they only know the knockoffs of Louis Vuitton, it's a €25 €25 bag that's really cheap. You can find on the streets in Amsterdam or Paris. So fashion has many different connotations, but it's a language. And music is very much the same way. You might be listening to something and somebody hears it, and they instantaneously have a judgment about you, just like your clothes. They might see you have dirt on your clothes, and they think you less of a person or more of a person. And I think it's very powerful to try to draw the connections between. I'm not saying I did it very well, but I'm trying to make these kind of metaphors. When you're talking about the written music, again, it's just a kind of language that you're putting on top of music. Now, it's good to know a way to talk between musicians, that you can tell them, okay, play these notes and these scales. But the truth is, the scales don't live until you're playing the notes. So again, it's just another kind of degree of separation between the sound and the talk. And of course, if you're really good at the language, it's very close, the proximity between this language of notes that are written and the language of music, but they're still separated. Sound is very different than the notes on the page. It's very frustrating sometimes. And I have a background in a jazz and classical music, and so I have a formal education in music, but it doesn't always express, especially with electronics. Electronics are very complicated. There's a lot of degrees to the sound, a lot of different ways that they decide to express themselves. So I've had to unlearn a lot of my previous knowledge. I've had to try to forget so much so that I could kind of remember properly what sound is supposed to be. And sound is sometimes just joy, right? And so when you feel this joy, how do you write about that? Well, there's no real way. So trying to remember that is important too. Environment to be very important for making music. I find that the kind of people you have in your life, the impact they have, and the sounds that they bring to you, you never should underestimate the power of an innocent person who maybe you've listened to an artist thousands of times. Maybe you have your favorite band and you've listened to them dozens and dozens of times, but a friend of yours or a loved one brings you one of their songs and it changes your relationship with that song. And so that kind of, that happens to me all the time between fans and my friends or my wife or my loved ones. They might present something to me that I think I know, but I don't really, until it has some connotation, some extra degrees of energy. That changes everything. So all the time I find myself constantly being reassessing my life, which is fun. wonderful people, but just a quick list. Yeah, well, I can give you a quick list of people that I find that are doing very important work from Los Angeles. I'll leave it at Los Angeles because I could go on and on about all the international people, which is very important, but I feel like I have a distinct perspective for Los Angeles. So one of them is Shlomo, S-H, okay, you know, okay, fantastic. He's on a wonderful trajectory right now where he was making more typical Los Angeles music, and then, I don't know how exactly, but he started to be impacted by more international music, and then suddenly he's on his own path, and it's beautiful. Another artist named Bats is also a young voice from Los Angeles who decided to add voice to a lot of his compositions, and it clicked in a way that it really resonated with people. It has a very wonderful weight. Another one is Matthew David, who is very noisy, and he's kind of at the edge of things. He's doing a lot of tape manipulation, he's doing a lot of experiments with noise, and then with beats and R&B, so he's mixing a lot of worlds together, but when it works, it's really, really good. Those are 3 easy names, and they're all young, and they're worth seeking out, for sure. Well, I can say with confidence I have a full-length record with a group of mine called Adventure Time, which is myself and this gentleman named Frosty, and it's very playful, very sample-based, and it's a whole record about space, about outer space. So that record's done. It'll come out maybe early next year, hopefully. I have a project I've been working on with my wife, as The Long Lost, and that record also is getting done, slowly but surely, and that'll see release maybe next year. I have music of my own that's getting done, maybe next year. The main thing is there's just always going to be some other sounds, and so if people want to keep their fingers to the pulse of the internet, you'll find music. Between my SoundCloud or Facebook, or just find it. Find my music, find other people's music, and just, if you can, just try to find the reason why. Because everyone has music now on their iPods, their cell phones, in their lives constantly, but I think they're starting to lose the purpose. And the purpose is to make our lives better, right? Or make our experience more full. So just don't lose that. Please don't lose that.